In the early years of World War II, artillery ruled the battlefield, but it was also painfully slow. Before a single shell could fall on target, calculations had to be made, maps aligned, wind direction noted, and spotters had to call back corrections. Each correction meant more delay, more time for the enemy to move, and no one in the world was faster at surviving artillery fire than the Germans. By 1942, German troops had perfected the countershell drill. Within 20 seconds of the first incoming shell, they were underground, safe in trenches, dugouts, or bunkers. They would wait out the barrage, climb back up, and resume fighting as if nothing had happened. For the Allies, it was infuriating. Thousands of shells would land, thunder shaking the ground. Yet when the smoke cleared, the Germans were still there, ready, organized, and deadly accurate. It was a deadly paradox. Artillery could level cities, but it couldn't kill time. Every minute between the first and the last shell meant German soldiers could hide, survive, and counterattack. The Allies needed a way to make every gun fire as one. The solution came from an unlikely place, the plains of Oklahoma. At Fort Sill, the U.S. Army's artillery school, a small group of officers was studying the geometry of trajectories, not for destruction, but for synchronization. Their names are mostly forgotten today: Captain Henry Reese, Lieutenant John Finley, and a handful of anonymous technicians who spent their nights scribbling in notebooks. Their question was simple. What if all artillery batteries could fire at different times, but have their shells land at the same time? It sounded impossible. Each shell had a different flight time, depending on distance, powder charge, angle, and weather. But with precise timing and perfect calculations, it could be done. They called it time on target. It meant that instead of a slow, rolling barrage, the first shells would hit everywhere at once. The first sound a German soldier would hear would be the explosion itself. The math was brutal. To coordinate even 3 guns, officers had to calculate trajectory arcs to the millisecond. For an entire division, over 100 guns, it required perfect radio discipline, stopwatches, and nerves of steel. They tested it in training fields at Fort Bragg and Camp Pickett. By 1943, the system was ready for war. It was first used in Angers during the North African Campaign. At El Getter, Tunisia, 1943, the U.S. 9th Division faced German positions fortified with anti-tank guns and machine nests. At dawn, American forward observers signaled the order. Over 200 guns opened fire, each at a different second, but the shells arrived together. Witnesses described the result as a hammer from the sky. German defenses vanished in minutes. The survivors were so disoriented, they fired blindly into empty fields. The experiment had worked, but the Americans didn't brag. They kept it secret, because they knew what they had created wasn't just a tactic, it was a weapon of timing itself. In Europe, it would soon earn a darker name: the Silent Barrage. December 1944, Belgium, the Ardennes. German forces had launched their final great offensive, the Battle of the Bulge. In the forests near Bastogne, the U.S. 101st Airborne was surrounded. German tanks pressed from the north, infantry from the east. The weather grounded Allied planes. The only thing left was artillery. Behind the lines, American gunners worked in silence. They synchronized their watches. They whispered the same command: time on target. At exactly 5:25 a.m., the first shell landed, and in the next heartbeat, hundreds more exploded across the forest. Tree trunks snapped like matchsticks. Snow turned to dust. German radio operators screamed that the sky had fallen. It was the largest coordinated TT ever executed, over 350 guns firing in perfect harmony. For 5 minutes, chaos reigned. Then, silence. The counterattack never came. When the smoke cleared, German formations were gone, obliterated before they could even dive for cover. Time on target had become more than a tactic. It was psychological warfare, a soundless countdown of death. By 1945, TT had become standard in every U.S. artillery command. Even the British adopted their own version, called predicted fire. The Soviets created storm barrages. But no system matched the precision of the Americans, who could now coordinate hundreds of guns without a single visual correction. The result was devastating. At Remagen, When Allied forces crossed the Rhine, German reinforcements were shattered before reaching the bridge. At the Siegfried Line, fortified bunkers simply disappeared. In a single year, the U.S. fired over 44 million shells in Europe, more than all Axis armies combined. And yet behind that overwhelming firepower lay not brute force but calculation.